Health Matters with Paul Rosen.
So has anyone else noticed the changes in you?
I was at a function last night, and a person came up and said to me, "Gee, you look thin."
Within about 3 weeks, it was such a dramatic change that when I went back to my medical doctor, he didn't know what to say. I mean, he just didn't have words.
Get healthy. Stay healthy. With your host, Paul Rosen.
Paul Rosen, the northernmost city in the United States is Barrow, Alaska. It's a small town of about 4,000 people above the Arctic Circle. In Barrow, Alaska, every winter, they have about 67 days of darkness. It stays night for over 2 months in Barrow. So do you think some people there may get depressed with all that darkness going on for day after day?
Like you really want me to answer that?
Yeah, I do want you to answer that.
Why wouldn't anybody get depressed?
Well, the flip side is during
days.
summer they have 82 days of light. But that could be depressing too, I imagine.
And I've always asked myself, why would anybody want to live
in Barrow, Alaska?
Yeah.
Above the Arctic Circle?
Let's put it this way. Human beings are amazingly adaptable, and I'm certain that there are some benefits. It would be, with my where I grew up and my own personal experience, it'd be tough for me to rationalize living in that, in that type of environment.
Well, home is home.
Each
if
to
you
his
grow
own.
up there.
Each to his own, and they should be free and allowed to do so.
Here's the point. During winter, many of us feel depressed. There are reasons for that, physiological as well as mental reasons.
And we're going to talk about them.
We are. There's a specific name for that symptom, as a matter of fact. That'll be one of our topics this morning on Health Matters.
Sad. And
That's
it's not it's
sad.
very,
you said it right there.
Yeah, it's really disruptive. But it's not what most people think it is, and we're going to talk about that during the show in the dead of winter, when sunlight is rarer than hen's teeth here in the Northwest. Many folks experience blue moods, or what is often referred to as seasonal affect disorder.
SAD, S-A-D.
S-A-D. I'll reveal the natural methods to handle the condition and actually how the condition occurs. Plus, eating fat does not make you fat. I don't know if we'll have time to get to that, but I want to say this. The myth that if you eat fat, that will make you fat is absurd and completely untrue. So, of course, the psychiatrists and psychologists are at work figuring out how to make every human behavior a pathology.
Sure they are.
Which is why the DSM-1 or 2 or 3 is now DSM-5, filled with all kinds of pathological states.
DSM is what?
It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
But you were right. It's now on its 5th edition.
Yes.
Available now on Amazon.
Yeah. Right.
For those who are curious.
For those who
But it
are
keeps
curious.
getting thicker and keeps having to be updated because they keep adding to the number of identified pathologies.
And the more they add, the more compensation they can receive, because you cannot receive insurance compensation unless there is a recognized diagnosis. That gets us into politics, and I'm not interested too much in that for this presentation. But in any case, seasonal affect disorder is considered the result of something that that occurs on a seasonal basis, comes and goes depending on the season of the year, and it's usually in the late fall or early winter, going away when the sun comes back. Now, it is no surprise that the Earth's seasonal rotation wouldn't have some type of impact, mental and or physical, on the human body. Is that a disease? I don't think so.
Well, it depends on the severity, does it not?
No,
I mean,
don't think so.
Some of us, and I'm not saying
you could
myself.
have a person who is a psychopath or a sociopath or bipolar or schizophrenic or what, but the bipolar person and the schizophrenic person, the person who's experiencing depression, person who is experiencing panic attacks or anxiety, they have something in common.
Which is?
Because I've had a chance to work with people in those 4 categories.
And what is the thing they all have in common?
If I answered that, we could stop the show.
Okay,
and then we wouldn't have anything to talk about.
We'll save that for later. But I'm assuming that
let's break it down.
I'm assuming seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, has to do with the fact that the longer, or I should say the shorter days during winter and the longer nights just have a mental health impact.
Well, isn't it interesting to note that deficiency of vitamin D has something to do with your mental mood throughout the year, let alone in the winter.
So vitamin D is an essential.
And isn't it interesting that vitamin D is one of the very few essential vitamins that we can actually produce inside our own bodies?
But we get that from the sun, is that right?
But we get that with sunlight exposure.
Okay.
And isn't it interesting that the sun begins to disappear quite dramatically during the same period of time that most people experience their most severe symptoms?
So there's a physiological reason for our depression during the winter.
And isn't it interesting that our adrenal glands and the state thereof has everything to do with the enzymatic production and the production of other proteins?
Production of enzymes. Is that correct? You
yes,
said
production of enzymes
Okay.
and other proteins.
All right.
Right? And if the adrenal glands, that have to do, by the way, with our mental state. Right?
So it all comes together very clearly here.
Doesn't it?
So I would say,
Doesn't
though,
it?
on top of that, though, you're describing a very physical reason why we have these reactions during winter.
Serotonin and melatonin are chemicals, right? Which are associated with the well-being of a human being. It is thought that deficiencies of those two things contribute to a state of depression or blue moods, seasonal affect disorder, seasonal blue moods.
So that chain reaction of things that happen in our bodies that you described includes non-production of those elements?
But isn't it interesting that the adrenal glands have a great deal to say about that balance? And isn't it also interesting that most people who experience seasonal affect disorder have something going on with their adrenal glands, which, by the way, is not accessible successfully via the blood work or skin tests or hair tests or saliva tests. Yes, saliva tests can reveal some information about adrenal glands, but the bottom line is if your saliva tests reveal that you have a deficient adrenal function, right? You've been having deficient adrenal function for many, many, many months or years before that.
So what I'm hearing here is if you already have problems with your adrenal glands going into the winter season, you have these additional aggravants taking away the healthy production of all these other elements that will keep your adrenal glands healthy.
And how do I know this?
Because you're angry and depressed during winter?
Well, isn't today angry? Oh, that reminds me. You
What?
said angry.
I said angry?
And what came to my mind was
I don't know.
Groundhog Day,
Uh-huh.
right? The movie.
Poxitani Phil. He was in the news just the other day.
The movie,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yes.
Don't drive angry.
Oh, does he say that in the movie? I don't remember.
That's
It's been
when-
a long
that's
time
when-
since I've seen
that-
Groundhog Day, which is Bill Murray's best movie.
That's when Bill Murray steals the groundhog
right.
and puts it up on the steering wheel while he's, rushing away in that pickup truck.
But Bill Murray's problems in that movie have less to do with SAD or seasonal affective disorder than the fact that he's stuck in the same day.
I would
for
recommend that
eternity.
movie for anybody who's sad.
I agree. It's a very funny, very fun movie. And in fact, shows how a guy takes extreme measures to deal with his depression.
Back to the topic at hand.
Okay.
Back to the topic at hand. So, adrenal glands, extremely important in their condition. And honestly, I personally have only found nutrition response testing and muscle testing to be able to dig out these deficiencies or lack of function of these adrenal glands, because that's every single time with every person that I've ever worked with who has these conditions, not just SAD, but who is suffering from depression or suffering from anxiety.
That could
disorders.
be year-round. During winter, it may be
adrenal
exacerbated.
glands, adrenal glands. And what other gland and organ are extremely important in the mental balance of a human being?
Thyroid.
Thank you.
Am I right?
Oh, am I right? Am I right?
I should have had my winning Jeopardy buzzer
And what
set
organ?
to go here. Well, the thyroid
Yeah,
gland.
no.
We've got the
thyroid gland, but what organ?
And the adrenal glands.
Come on, you can do it.
What
I'm pulling
organ?
out what organ? We talk about it all the time. What's related to thyroid?
The brain.
No, well, that too. Good job.
Liver.
You got it.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I was just throwing stuff against the
I
wall.
know you were, but
Throwing organs around.
It's unintentional because you've been around me too long.
I guess. Speaking of sad.
So the condition of your liver is really, really important. Most people don't realize that organs also and their condition have a direct relationship to their mood.
I'd say that's very fair. I was not aware of that until you spoke a moment ago.
Mm-hmm. So where there is more depression or irritability, the thyroid is more the center of the dysfunction. Where there is more anxiety or panic, the adrenal glands are at the center of the dysfunction.
That's interesting.
But in any case, the adrenal glands and the thyroid are brothers. Along with the heart, we call that the power triad of the body. So if you're experiencing symptoms, then your body is out of balance. We use a term regulation. Your body is in dysregulation, that it is not regulating properly. When you talk about treating seasonal affect disorder, one thing we pointed out, it's the sun, for Pete's sakes, which is why using light, various light products can be useful.
Light products such as, what do you mean?
Well, like various types of lights, exposure to artificial lighting.
Okay, so you don't want to sit in the dark necessarily.
Keep things bright
all winter long.
I tell you, that's one reason why I always have twinkle lights around.
Really?
My wife's got them around the house all over the place.
So like
various
Christmas
colors.
lights.
Well, you would call them Christmas lights. We call
Twinkle
them holiday lights, or we call them sad lights.
Sad lights or anti-sad lights.
Not
would be more
satellites.
accurate.
Not satellites.
I said anti-sad lights. That's what I said. You could have satellites around your house. That'd be kind of weird. That'd be kind of strange.
But bright lights, colorful lights, most everybody likes them, especially in the winter.
Here's something.
That's the reason.
Here's
right?
something, too. I know when I get up every morning, do this every morning, the first thing I do is hit a few lights. And I've done that kind of subconsciously for years.
Yeah.
And I think you just explained to me why my subconscious was telling me to do that, because it gives me maybe a little boost, right when I'm waking up. And that's the best time for that particular extra bit of energy.
Yeah, sunlight is absolutely critical to life, without which there wouldn't be any.
So in the absence of sunlight in winter, we can substitute some artificial light. And I think that can have an attitudinal influence.
It can be useful. It can help. But if your adrenal glands or your thyroid and or your liver are not functioning properly and you don't know it, it will be marginally helpful.
But how do you know? How do you know that's the issue?
You come to see me or someone like me doing this method of evaluation, nutrition response testing, and we identify what's going on and put you on the track to wellness. Does that mean that you will not feel deprived of light in the winter? No, it does not. Most people are. Ask anybody, right? Ask most people. I can't say anybody. My office manager loves the rain and the clouds. She's happier with that.
Well, I like it too, but only in limited amounts. If you're going month after month, or, as say, in Barrow, Alaska, 67 consecutive days without seeing the sun, I think that will have a psychological as well as a physiological effect.
And again, of course, we have to, if your life is a miserable challenge, that's also a factor. I'm not saying that some folks might not need, a complete redo on their life. But I'm talking about those folks that are that understand that they have to put their life in order. If you're in a relationship that's not working, get out of it. Right? If you're in a job that's not working and there is some potential to do something else, get out of it. Right? All these things are necessary. But in general, those people who are on medications for depression or seasonal affect disorder and don't want to use medications, come see us.
Is seasonal affective disorder, once it's diagnosed, again, it's in the DSM, so I assume it can be diagnosed. Is it typical for those patients to be prescribed medications?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Antidepressants. Depending on which part of the spectrum the mood imbalance manifests itself, more irritability, depression, antidepressants, more panic and anxiety, anti-anxiety drugs. But all you have to do is go look at the side effects of these drugs. And you'll see, number one, that one of the side effects of either of those two categories of drugs is the same symptom that you're actually trying to address.
So it's a vicious circle.
Right.
It sounds like, in fact, the medication may make things worse or just simply transfer the problem over in some way.
The interesting thing is that the liver and thyroid and adrenal, what are they affecting? And it's the frontal brain, the front part of the brain is what they're affecting. Again, that can be addressed with the proper nutritional strategy.
And you have to be specific about that, I assume. What works for me may not work for you. Is that correct? Or are there broad outlines you can give for people suffering from SAD?
The interesting thing is that they also talk about not just winter, seasonal affect disorder. They talk about it in spring and summer.
Well, why is that? Why, if we're getting more
because
sunshine?
They don't understand the true cause of these conditions.
Well, but as you spoke of...
sunlight would have nothing to do with it in the summer.
So it could still be the glands you've mentioned in the liver. Could be those things, but maybe there are also other things going on during your life that don't necessarily limit themselves to the winter months.
Didn't I already highlight that?
You did.
Yeah, but that's not going to help somebody.
All right.
Unless they actually make a change.
Okay.
Right. What I'm saying is that oftentimes you hear it's the sunlight and that's the only thing it is. Well, how do you have spring and summer seasonal affect disorder if it's the sunlight only?
That tells us all by itself that it's not the sunshine only or lack of it.
Correct. And so it's really important that anybody who is experiencing this type of these type of symptoms understand that their adrenal glands are not happy, their thyroid is not happy, their liver is particularly unhappy. So how do you restore happiness to them? Well, you have to have a way to be able to evaluate the specific underlying root causes, which include nutritional deficiencies and the other category that I talk about constantly, which is environmental influences.
Which include what? These environmental influences?
They include food sensitivities or allergies. They include immune challenges that are underlying, viral, bacterial, parasitic, fungal. They include heavy metal accumulation. They include chemical exposure. Last couple of shows we did on chemical exposure.
Right. So these things could come from chemical exposure in particular. It
Absolutely.
could come from your foods
Absolutely.
or your household products, the shampoo you use, for example, cleaning products, etc.
And thinking that another chemical, such as an antidepressant or anti-anxiety drug, is actually going to treat the root cause of what you're experiencing is uninformed.